Hello and welcome to The Verdict. We're glad you're with us. Mick Cornett, Kent Myers. We're here every Sunday morning and throughout the week discussing topical issues and interviewing some interesting guests. And today, an interesting guest discussing topical issues.
Yes, and Happy New Year.
Thank you very much.
This is New Year's Day.
2006.
It is.
We made it.
Well, so far, yes. And we've got a guest today that I think you're really going to enjoy. He's coming back for his fourth appearance on The Verdict, sports columnist Barry Tramel with the Oklahoman and also radio talk show host. He's going to talk about kind of on January 1st, looking back for significant things that have gone on this previous in 2005 and what he can anticipate be interesting in 2006 and what his surprises, disappointments, just whatever he has on his mind, which is usually a lot and always well put.
Let's get to a break, come back and talk to Barry Tramel. You're watching The Verdict. We will return.
For one Oklahoma-based company, success didn't happen overnight. Initially, the days were long, 80-hour weeks common. As we grew, we wanted to share our success, and the ideals of corporate and civic responsibility found a welcome home. Today, we're the largest investor in the Sooner State and a source for exciting, new, high-quality jobs. We're Chesapeake Energy, committed to building a better Oklahoma.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
Hi, I'm Court Diffie. With all of the change that has taken place in the car industry in the past decade here in Oklahoma, it's hard to find a family-run business anymore. One of the things that makes us different, that if you visit any one of our 3 locations, you're going to find one of our family members there ready to help you. Does that really make any difference? We really believe it does. So I invite you to come out and experience the Diffie family difference and decide for yourself.
The Cox Channel, more sports. More fans. More cheerleaders. More fun. Nobody does more local sports, and nobody does it better.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Do you like that Abe Lemons quote?
That was a funny quote, yeah.
All of his are funny. We are so pleased to welcome back Barry Tramel across the table from me. Barry is a sports journalist with the Oklahoman, also a radio talk show host with KREF, The Ref, from 4 to 7 weekdays. And are you on the weekends by any chance?
No.
He has been previously with the Norman Transcript for a number of years before coming to the Oklahoman. He is now making his 4th appearance on The Verdict, and it may surprise you to know he is about to become a grandfather. Well, welcome to The Verdict.
Thank you, Kent.
Congratulations on that.
Yeah, congratulations.
Well, I know I don't look old enough to be a grandfather, but it's coming next August.
Well, congratulations on that.
That's wonderful.
Hey, the idea of doing...
And Happy New Year, by the way.
Yeah, of course. The idea of doing multiple forms of media, writing and being on the radio, what are the differences? What do you find preparation-wise is different? And obviously you get immediate feedback on the radio that you don't necessarily get when you're writing a column.
Yeah, that's right. Although email means, and the internet means you can get close to immediate feedback off the newspaper. Oh, the difference is I say a lot of words in 3 hours on the radio. Never counted them, but I say a lot of words. A really long column in the Oklahoman is 800 words. So you got to be much more concise, much more focused, one topic, stay on track on the newspaper. radio sort of scatter shooting.
Don't want you to give away your secrets here, but I once talked to you about preparation for column. You were telling me that some of your columns, they typically, as you gather material, it may be months from the time you first thought that might be a good idea until it finally runs in the paper. Take us through that step.
Well, yeah, I keep a notebook and write down ideas, and I've sat on ideas as long as 2 or 3 years, and just wasn't the right timing, and typically a couple of weeks is the standard length of time before you see it in print. I've been mulling it over, working on it for a couple of weeks, and of course sometimes you got to write something in 15 minutes.
Well, sometimes do your editors say, this is what everybody's talking about?
Yes. Yeah. And I've got Mike Sherman, my sports editor, very good at staying topical and staying in communication with me, saying, hey, what do you think about this? Or calling me at 7:30 at night and say, hey, this happened. Let's get this in the paper tomorrow, your take. So a lot of it's done on the fly, which is why sometimes an idea that's ready to go gets pushed back 2 weeks. Sometimes it just gets pushed aside.
Let's talk about something that happened this last fall with the Shawnee quarterback disqualification by the OSSAA in the semifinal game, and then they played the semifinal game. Had some kind of difficulty there with the refusal to shake hands and the like. The ultimate outcome being determined by the Oklahoma Supreme Court. What's your take on that whole process?
Well, my ultimate theory is this. When it comes to sports, we've got to stay out of the courts. That's the last thing we can do is go to the courts. Now, beyond that, it was a shame and it was regrettable. And I think Tucker Brown, the Shawnee quarterback, I don't think he's a bad kid from what people say. I don't think he did anything malicious, but he did do something you can't do. He kicked an opponent in the head. Now, saying he was justified or defending himself, well, the tape really doesn't show that. And even if it did, it's still grounds for dismissal from the game, and the rules say two-game suspension. And I think the black hats have been put on the OSSAA when in fact those guys are not doing anything except enforcing the rules that were put into effect by the schools themselves, by schools like Shawnee, which, from what I understand, signed off on the rule too. So, it's unfortunate, but we have to have rules. And we have to have, I think, on the scholastic level, I think we have to have some certain levels of sportsmanship and decorum. And so I salute the OSSAA for sticking by their rules.
One can suggest that perhaps there won't be quite as many treks to the courthouse now, considering how the Supreme Court resolved the question by basically saying that the Supreme Court said the court system has no business interfering in this kind of situation. So that may ward off some future contests.
Well, I would hope so, but I doubt it, because we've got a long history of state associations winning in court on the appellate level, but generally speaking, you can always find a local judge that'll give you an injunction. That's what happened here. In most states, what has happened is they go ahead and play the game, and the player in question plays, and if his team wins, then you've got a big mess, because often fairly soon after that game, the appeal judge, either the Supreme Court or whoever, says, no, he is ineligible. Then you've got a team that has advanced with an ineligible player. Then you've got a fraudulent verdict on the field of play. And so that's why I think the delay of the game was a very good move by the OSSAA.
Let's talk about college football. Now, this show is airing on New Year's Day. We've taped it before that. We don't know how Oklahoma's game came out. So if that comes up, we're obviously guessing because it's not been played. Let's talk about Oklahoma State. First year under head coach Mike Gundy. How would you assess that first year of the new regime?
Poor, very poor. This is a program that 3 straight bowl years, 3 straight winning seasons after a long drought of football at OSU. And I think that momentum was, lost with Mike Gundy's first year. Now, some things happened. He dismissing the 8 players, some of which were really big-time players. Every time you saw Oklahoma State sort of struggle to, make any kind of big play, or you had to think of Prentice Elliott, who was just a phenomenal talent. Mike Gundy, we moved him from the team for good reasons, disciplinary reasons, and really Mike, I think, made some insurance moves for the future, made some moves that'll pay off in the future. But was not conducive to winning football this year. So I think that'll pay off for Oklahoma State. I still think the verdict's out on his coaching staff, particularly the offense. This no huddle, spread, very unconventional. Maybe it'll be great. Maybe it'll take off. But maybe there's a reason no one else is running it too. So I think Mike's still unproven as a head coach.
How long does the honeymoon last? How long before people start applying whether or not he wins or loses to him specifically and being more accountable than it is with the first-year coach?
Well, I think a couple of things. One, I would think next year would be important to Mike. I don't think he's going to get fired, but another year like this, and people are saying, "What the heck's going on?" I think year 3 would be really important. Now, the one thing Mike Gundy's got is Boone Pickens is in his corner, so. I'd rather have everybody against me and Pickens for me than the other way around because, that's the way it works is if you write big checks, you got a lot of power. So Pickens likes Mike Gundy, and you know what? Frankly, I think everybody likes Mike Gundy. I really can't think of anybody who doesn't like Mike Gundy, and I think most people are pulling for him and hoping he does well. And Mike says that everything's in place in Stillwater, facility-wise, support-wise, personnel-wise, for this program to be better than it's ever been. So, I think he's probably right about that. So there's no reason why Oklahoma State can't get back into the mainstream of the Big 12 and going to bowls and winning seasons, other than it's a very difficult division and very difficult to keep up with not just OU and Texas, but Texas Tech, Texas A&M. So he's in the fast lane.
Well, let me ask you, change the subject and talk about 2 other coaches in the Big 12. One former coach, Gary Barnett, and Bill Callahan. Let's start first with Gary Barnett. What do you think about that dismissal and the like?
I think it was coming from the day we saw the film clip where Gary Barnett's talking about his female kicker and not just the words he used, when he's saying she was terrible. Sometimes you'll come across a coach, not very often, but sometimes you'll come across a coach who uses words like that. But the tone in his voice and the venom in his voice, when I heard that, I said, what's he talking about? I've never heard a coach talk like that about a player, past or present. And I said at the time, he won't coach this next season. Well, he ended up coaching that season and the 04 and 05. So he stayed ahead of the posse for a while. But I think his fate was sealed that day, and Colorado was in financial trouble athletically, and they were. I think they just needed some time to get on their feet financially, and wait. Gary Barnett's had a nice run. He's won 4 of the last 5 Big 12 North titles, so he's done a very good job on the field. And even this year they won the North. But the way they finished with the 3 bad losses, including the game against Nebraska, and then followed by the game against Texas, it was really an embarrassing performance. It seemed like maybe Colorado players didn't even want to be there. I think that was enough reason for the Colorado administration to say, okay, here's our chance. Let's cut our ties with Gary Barnett.
Let's hold off on the Bill Callahan comments. We'll also talk about the University of Oklahoma when we return. You're watching The Verdict with our guest, Barry Tramel, and we'll be right back.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
And Blankenship has stopped at the line of scrimmage. No gain on the play. Leading it 4th and 7 on the Tiger 46-yard line. 38 seconds on the clock. The Tigers have no choice but to go for it. Wiggins had to do the kicking. Here's the snap. And the kick's away.
RSM McGladrey. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. RSM McGladrey. In Oklahoma City, the phone number is 843-5311.
Hockey is back, and it's on the Cox Channel. The Oklahoma Ford Turnpike Series features the Oilers and the Blazers exclusively on the Cox Channel. Whether it's in Tulsa or Oklahoma City, you're covered with the Cox Channel.
Cheers, Buddy Christmas, the rookie Jared Barraza.
Nobody does more sports. Nobody does it better. The Cox Channel is home to the Oklahoma Ford Turnpike Series. Game on.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett, Kent Myers. We're visiting with sports columnist Barry Tramel of the Daily Oklahoman and also KREF Radio. Barry, Bill Callahan at Nebraska had a rough season, up and down.
Well, he's had 2 years now where it's not gone well. It's a bad fit, in my opinion. I'm not sure that Bill Callahan really fits into the college football culture. I don't think that a place like Nebraska is steeped in so much tradition and the people care so much, and it is so different than professional football. I'm not sure Bill Callahan belongs on a college campus. And I was encouraged when Nebraska beat Colorado so bad in Boulder to end the regular season. But then, you see what Texas did to Colorado, and you realize that Colorado was just a shell of itself. So I'm not sure it's going to get worked out at Nebraska. I'm not sure that Bill Callahan's going to get it done.
Back in the days when the University of Oklahoma, the last couple of 3 years, were vying for the national title, we heard an awful lot of discussion here about what's the appropriate system to use. Is the BCS broken? Does it need to be replaced? Does it need to be tweaked? And so on. This year we didn't hear near as much talk about the BCS in Oklahoma as we had in the past. What is your assessment of the BCS system as a system to select the national champion?
Well, the BCS system is a godsend. The BCS is a manna from heaven. And people who criticize the BCS, it's like criticizing Band-Aids or criticizing alcohol or something used to treat wounds or anything. Well, yeah, more is needed, but why are you criticizing something that's actually helping? So I don't understand the criticism of the BCS. We have a playoff in college football. People say we need a playoff. Well, we do have one. We have a 2-team playoff, and the BCS provides us with that 2-team playoff. We used to didn't have any kind of playoff. In the old days, we'd see USC playing in the Rose Bowl under the old system. They'd be in the Rose Bowl. Texas would be in the Fiesta Bowl, and we could sit and argue about who's better. The BCS allows those two teams to play each other. So I don't have a lot of patience with critics of the BCS because not only does it works famously.
I mentioned earlier we're taping the show before Oklahoma's bowl game. So that aside, let's talk about the Oklahoma program and how they struggled in September. Did they right the ship? Are they in position to be a contender for the national title next year?
Well, I think they're going to be much better, and they're going to be, you know what, I think next year Oklahoma is going to be the kind of team that we thought they were going to be this year. I don't think the Sooners are going to be back on the level they were 2000, 2003, 2004. I think provided Vince Young comes back, Texas is going to be the cream of the Big 12. I think Texas will beat Oklahoma again in the Cotton Bowl next year. Virtually impossible for the Sooners to get to the national pinnacle, losing to Texas. But I think the Sooners can have a very good year, 10-2, 11-1, something like that, be a top 10 type team, maybe get to a BCS Bowl. So I think they're on their way back.
They've had a lot of turnover in the assistant coaches. Is that part of the issue, or is this just merely a talent drop-off in 05?
Well, I think the coordinator issue hurts. I think you see that on every level. I think if you went to Bill Belichick with the Patriots and said, "Hey, are you missing Charlie Weiss? Are you missing Romeo Crennel?" I think the answer would be yes, I do. Does Bob Stoops miss Mike Stoops? I think the answer is yes. And when he, the offense has been pretty stable. But I think anytime there's coaching turnover, that's the one thing. People like Switzer in the 70s and 80s had a very solid staff. We saw it out in Nebraska where they seem to have the same coaches for 20 years. So staff stability is very good, and I think that has been a factor. But Oklahoma's well did run dry some in talent. The 03 signing class, recruiting class, obviously was not very good, and a lot of attrition there. So, this was a down year that, we should have seen. We didn't know they were going to fall this far, but we should have all, us in the media being the prime culprits, should have seen coming.
Let's talk about the NBA briefly. A question I get almost daily is, did you foresee the support for the Hornets to be as strong as it is? And of course the answer is, well, no. I mean, who could have thought that we'd be a team in the top 10 in attendance?
Well, I got to say, Mick, you were one of the bigger optimists, because I can remember chatting with you a year or two ago, long before Hurricane Katrina or anything else, and you talking about how Oklahoma City has a hunger for high-end entertainment. We've seen that borne out. The thing that's funny when you go to a Hornets game, on the rare games that it's not a sellout, if there's any empty seats, it's the cheap seats that are empty. It's not the rich seats. Yeah. So I think the NBA it's been fantastic for Oklahoma City, and I think we learned a lot about ourselves that we didn't know. I can remember a quote from George Shinn from a couple of months ago, and he didn't tell us this. He told the New Orleans media this, that there's more money in Oklahoma City than there was in New Orleans before the flood. And I don't think we ever saw ourselves as a place that did have a financial base. I think we saw ourselves as a little place that could do it, if we got the chance. Well, you know what? I think we're a lot better than even we thought we were in terms of corporate prowess, in terms of people willing to spend money to have a good time. The NBA's been the best thing sports-wise. It's just been an unbelievable addition to Oklahoma City, and I've just fallen in love with the sport. The sport itself is much better than I thought it was, and I know when you have a team that you can get interested in and care about and follow, makes it much better. But when you see it live, the NBA is so much better than you thought it was, or than I thought it was. What I used to think is sort of, I thought it was a little bit of a fraudulent basketball. Well, not only is it not fraudulent, it's real basketball. It's the same basketball that high schools and colleges play, only better. The guys are bigger and faster and more skilled. So I think on every front it's been great. And I don't know what your thoughts are, Mick, but I think the NBA's here to stay.
Yeah, well, I agree. This team can go back to New Orleans, but I think the NBA is going to find us a franchise, regardless of how that.
Well, I don't want to
out.
get you in trouble, but this team's not going back to New Orleans. Nothing's going back to New Orleans.
Well, like New Orleans is. Like you say, you didn't want to get me in trouble.
Well, you just did. Well, let me change the subject. Put your 2005.
But we've just got about a minute left, too.
2005 hat on. Biggest surprise this last sports year.
Biggest surprise. Well, the success of the Hornets.
Yeah.
The way the Sooners lost to USC. 36-point loss in the Orange Bowl. Yeah. We thought they could lose. We didn't know they could lose by 36. That would probably be the top two in my mind.
Mm-hmm. And college recruiting coming up. Any thoughts on Oklahoma and Oklahoma State? We got about 30 seconds left.
No, I have no thoughts. Recruiting, I didn't much care. I don't follow recruiting. I think it's a little bit of a artificial. I think it's an artificial enterprise.
How do you answer your listeners when they call on the radio and want to talk recruiting?
I say, Kerry Murdoch's on from 6 to 7:30 in the morning, and he knows all about it.
Hey, Barry, we appreciate you coming on the Verdict.
You bet.
We're out of
Thanks
time.
again.
Barry Tramel's with the Daily Oklahoman and KREF Radio. We always appreciate Barry being on the show. Very candid and very entertaining.
Grandfather
we'll be right
Tramel.
back. That's right. Kent and I'll be back. The final word after this.
That land next door was a mess. Take more than a lawnmower to revive that land. I heard the oil and natural gas people was cleaning up old oil sites, and it wouldn't cost us a plug nickel. Oh yes, sir, it was quite a revival. The whole church showed up, want to make a playground for the kids. It sure is a blessing.
Bringing out the best in each student. That is the simple goal and tradition of Heritage Hall. The focus on the individual shapes the educational experience at Heritage Hall. It Each student benefits from small classes, able, dedicated teachers, a solid academic curriculum, and exceptional co-curricular programs of athletics, arts, community service, and other activities, parental involvement, personalized counseling, and the development of responsibility, integrity, and love of learning. If you want education taught with pride, then you want Heritage Hall.
He's gonna score.
Come on, baby, come on, baby.
Go, go! Go, baby! Go!
Satellite go out again?
Yeah, rain.
But this is just as fun.
Don't live in satellite denial. Get the reliability you expect from Cox, your friend in the digital age.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers wrapping up a show with Barry Tramel, sports columnist and radio host on KREF.
Always good to have Barry on. He's very wise about sports subjects, and he's very concise and lets us know what he thinks. He doesn't hold back, and always entertaining. I think he's labeling the Hornets' success the biggest surprise, or one of the biggest surprises in 2005. Would agree with a lot of our visitors.
About a minute left in the show, Kent, and one of the things that Barry talked about was the relatively surprise of the Hornets, and I know people are a little bit surprised that people are coming in and in the numbers that they're coming in. I don't know anyone that's not surprised with that.
Well, I don't think anybody would have predicted it, and if they would have, they wouldn't have done it very loud.
Yeah, well, that's right.
Because they wouldn't have had much reason to predict that. It's just a tribute to the citizens of the middle Oklahoma to come out and support this team, and it's almost like it's a civic obligation to do so, and they do it with glee.
What's coming up on a future show?
Vince Orza, one of Oklahoma's impact players. So we're going to have Vince on next week. He's the founder of Garfield's and has a lot of other varied things on his resume that you'll hear about, and I think you'll find fascinating. He's a guy that's made a real difference in a lot of different ways in this state, and we're going to be able to visit with him for a few minutes next week.
That'll be next week. We'll see you then.
The preceding program was produced by the Production Services Group at Cox Communications, exclusively for the Cox Channel.